Hello and welcome back to the channel. So I was talking to a buddy of mine about Payload CMS and why I think it's pretty awesome and why I've used it for a bunch of different things that aren't directly related to building a website. When you Google around Payload, everybody says download the website template, download the website template. I'm not building a website, I don't need a website template, and it's kind of overwhelming. So this video is kind of for my buddy. I am just going to build a simple to-do app with Payload, so that you can see how you set up collections, how you interface with the database, and how you pull the data in the front end of your next application. That is it. None of the other crazy cool shit that you can do with Payload. It's just like, this is the baby step to check out Payload. So if that's something you're interested in, please stick around. If there's something else you'd like to see, drop a comment, let me know, and let's get to the code. All right, so to get started, we're going to just follow their approach and just use this npx create-payload-app. So let's copy that. Let's open up a terminal and let's roll. So npx create-payload-app. We'll take all this latest and my payload to do. All right, so I am going to choose a blank template. I am going to select SQLite. You can select any of the other ones. I use SQLite. It's just easier. I don't have to do any more setup or configuration. It's just, and it meets the objective of our demo. My database. Okay, so now let's cd into the project. My payload to do. And let's open it up in my editor. And before we get too far, let's just see what you get out of the box. So let's run this thing. So npm run dev. Okay, so now it has started up. My app is up and running. And one of the first things you notice is that you get this default home page, and I'll go to the project structure, we'll edit it later. But you can go directly to the admin panel. And to me, this is like the most powerful part of Payload for me in the work that I do in my company. Is I just like the fact that I don't need to build an admin panel for my client, right? Just out of the box, I get it. And next to that is, of course, the REST API, which I'll show you also. So if I go to my admin panel, the first time in, you have to create a default user. I'm just going to use admin@mail.com. Like I said, I'm keeping this simple, so I'm not going to go into all the crazy things that you can do with the user and authentication and all that other stuff. All right, so by default, the application starts out with two collections. It starts out with the users, and this is my admin user that I just logged in as. And then it has this media collection. Another powerful thing that I like about it is that this is configuration by code. These collections are set up in code. I don't need to go into my SQLite database. I don't need to write SQL to create scripts. I don't need to do all of that stuff. It will be done for me. Let's just quickly take a look at the project structure that we got by default. So if we look at the project structure that we get by default, we have a Next app. But inside our app directory, we have our two groups. We have our front end group. So this is the layout for that main page that you just saw. And then this is the payload admin UI and everything. So that's how it's kind of separated. And then, of course, it's regular Next. So they just drop in an example of a Next route that is used to get payload, utilizing the payload local API. So this is all you need to do to dump out the collection of users. Now, the next thing is, let's take a look at collections, and collections is basically how you interact with the database. So here's a user collection. Here's the slug, what the title is that you want it to appear. So when I go to users and I click on one, this is the title. And then you identify the fields. In a field that's marked as authentication is true, you get the email and the password added by default. In our media, this is how you can upload blobs, content to your application. If you set upload true, it allows you to upload things to it. Stupid simple, stupid simple. And then you can add additional fields, mark them as required as true. Like I said, this is a basic one, so I'm not going to go into all of the crazy things that you can do with Payload. But the important thing to know when you're first starting out as a beginner is to be able to set this access so that people can read and write your content. And so for media, since we are going to use in this demo, I'm just going to set all of them to true. So read is true, update, all of them is true. Start by just creating a new file, and we will call it to-do say todos.ts, and it's going to be a collection, so const. Well, I'm using cursor, so it's going to jump ahead and start filling things out for me, but that's okay. So we want a title for our to-do, and we want a checkbox indicated that it's completed. We'll do our created at. And what's the other thing that we will do? We're going to add some other stuff that we will touch on in a later video to kind of show hooks and all the other cool things you can do, but we'll just keep it simple, but we'll lay out the collection so that it supports it all now. So we have a title, we have completed, we have the date created at, updated at, and then let's add a description. And we're going to keep it simple now. We're just going to make it a text area. We're not going to get into rich text or any of the other stuff. Like I said, I want to make this very simple as an intro to get used to what Payload can do for you. All right, so now I've created this to-do collection. Oh, and let me make sure I had the access to it. So access, everybody has access. So now my collection is set up. I believe, let's see, let's go back. After I create my collection, we need to go into my Payload config. And right here, I need to add my collection, first of all, to import it, and then go down into this collections array and add it. So now it's there. So now let's refresh this guy, and now my to-dos are there. The other thing, so that you know, is that since the to-dos are there, remember I said this is updating your database for you. So I'm using a SQLite database. So let's open it up and see what it's done for my database already. So now you can see it's all the collections that are created. The media collection is there. These are additional tables that are created and used by Payload. It has my to-dos collection that I just laid out. You can see it created all of the fields for me with the appropriate types. Then it has a user here. This was all done without me writing any SQL. I think it's pretty powerful. So next, let's go back to our admin console. So once again, this is the other thing that I keep going on and on about because it matters a lot to the work that we do, is I now have a user interface that is, it is customizable, but this is still acceptable for a lot of clients where they could just go in and start using it. So let's create a new to-do. UI cleanup, it's not completed. Need to clean up homepage. All right. So it's set the default values, the created at, the updated out, and you see it has nice controls here for me to edit them. So this is pretty awesome. And then now I save it. And then here's the other thing that's pretty awesome. I'm just going to demonstrate the REST API because it's clear, it's right here in the UI. So we get this default REST API that's built for us automatically that we'll have access to. And we won't use the REST API in the front-end application. We'll use the Payload local API, but in theory, I could also utilize the REST API to get back the exact same data. Now I have a full get put post, basically CRUD API for every collection that I create in Payload. All right, so we just have this one payload. Sorry, we just have this one to do in. Let's just quickly add another one. Clean up UI about page. Date the, so it includes career information. All right, and we will save this. So now we have two of these guys. Touching back on the API, you can see this API to-dos. If I click on it, it will give me back the content. It's hard to see up here, but it is just /API to-dos and then the ID, and then you can provide a depth. And that's when we include relationships and a bunch of other things. And I just realized I want to demonstrate media upload also because I realized that is pretty important. So let me go back and let's go to my to-dos, and we are going to create a relationship field. Excuse me, you can associate an image with your to-do. So we're going to say name, media, upload relation to media. So by default, this is going to create a relationship with the media object. When I retrieve them, I will get the associated media object with it too. So now this is an error that you might see sometimes. One thing to know is that what this is doing is it's using Drizzle in the back. Drizzle is an ORM. And what Drizzle is doing is it's pushing database changes to the database. It's trying to kind of keep the database updated for you without you creating the migrations. Migrations is a separate topic. I'm trying to keep this simple, so I'm going to try and stay away from migrations right now. And hopefully I can get my database back in shape without doing anything. What this error is saying that it's trying to update the database because I added this media relationship here, and it can't do it. So let me see if I can just clear. restart it, and it'll get it right for us. So let's go back to to-dos and let's create a new to-do, and this one will associate an image. So let's create new image. We'll select an existing file, model Y. So we have a new to-do, and I'll just say wash my car. Looking bad. Salt, because it's been snowing here in DC. Salt needs to be removed. And let's save this. Looks like it saved successfully. Back to my to-dos, and then now the relationship between the media object and my to-do is there for me. So if I click on my to-do and I click on API, you can see that I have my to-do, but my relationship with the image has been managed for me. And if I click up here so you can see what it will look like when you call it through a REST API, you can see I get all the data that I want. All managed for me, all through configuration and code. So that's the back end. Now, how do we get this in the front end of our application? Because that's really what we want to do. So let's go to our front end. And right now we just have this page. And so it says we can go to our front end. Where's our front end? Source, app, front end, page. We're not going to focus too much on style unless Cursor helps me out. We're just going to focus on getting the content in and kind of showing you some of the things that you could do. So let's delete all this. Now our page is empty. So let's put a title. We're just going to say payload to do. So payload to do list. Let's remove this class home because I don't know what it's got going on inside of there. Let's take a look at how we're pulling data with payload. You can see here we get full access to the payload object. And from the payload object, I get access to the local API. So we'll be able to query payload objects using the payload local API right here inside of our application. And since this is a server page in Next, I can use async calls right here inside my page. The first thing to do is you can see how with the authentication, I can get the currently logged in user. So let's just add that up here and we will say user email. So I get the email of my authenticated user. Step 2, we want to get all of our to-dos that we just created. So we're going to, we don't need the user ID because we're not going to focus on who owns the to-do yet. We're just going to get them all. The thing that was interesting is that because we are tightly coupled here, I get access to all the types. Let's just set my limit to 100 because I don't want to deal with paging, which is another thing that you get by default. So let's remove that. And let's look at this to-do object. To-dos is declared but never read. So let's add it down here. Cursor, help me out to quickly get my to-dos loop going. There we go. You can see I'm getting my to-dos rendered. The other awesome thing is that you get this response object back. You can see how everything's nicely typed for you. And as I mentioned earlier, you get all the pagination information returned also. So let's kind of clean this up a bit. All right. So we have all our information. That's the basics. Let's get the remainder of the fields. So you can see how easy it was to pull the data using the payload API. So let's wrap this whole thing in a link and create another page. So we'll say link. So what is it complaining about? Probably that there's no page. Oh, it's unique. So let's move this key up. Add the key here to my link. Let's save that. Style. Remove the text decoration. All right, but it should, yeah, so it can't find a page. All right, so let's make this new page. All right, so let's see if my cursor is just being nice and making this all work for me. To-dos / to-dos. We move my page into the right folder. Let's save everything, refresh, and I get my specific to-do. And then now on this page, we can, well, I'll show it two ways. So first, we can just follow the same pattern of using payload. And so I believe there's a find by, is there a find by ID? Yeah, it's find by ID. I can just set the param ID, and then it should just give me back the one doc. What does it like, not like? Param should be awaited, blah, blah, blah. I got my params wrong. My bad. All right, so to do is wash my car. Let's clean this up a little bit. All right, but what we want to do is let's set up the one that has the image. So let's go back, and which one actually had the image? Let's go back to all my to-dos. I want my to-do 3, wash my car. So let's go back, wash my car. And so on here, there should be a media object. So let's just see what we got. And so it's not going to show us everything. So let's cheat. So we're going to say JSON stringify to-do media. So here's all, let's clean this up. So here's all the information that you're getting back on that image. We just want the URL. And so let's do an image. And so we need to import next image. And why? And we have our image. Let's remove this pre. So what's happening here is that this media object can be either a number or null. Let's see, can I just quickly get out of this? No, I can't. So what I usually do with this guy is I'll just wrap it. I'm certain there's a cleaner way to do this. I'm just too lazy to do it right now. All right, I believe we can remove the Elvis operator since we're checking above. So let's refresh this, and I have my to-dos. Let's just quickly put a back button in. Import. I don't want to get too caught up in the code because I really just want to focus on what Payload is doing for you. And this should be just back to slash, not to to-dos. So let's go here. All right, and so back to to-dos, and so here's my list. All right, so what have we seen so far? We have showed how with Payload, through the admin console, we were able to very quickly create database tables, because that's what we did through creating a collection, and create relationships on the fly. We've also showed that by default, I now get access to my Payload API inside of my Next application, so it makes it very easy to query and pull data back. We also saw that we are getting, when we're doing our queries, not only are we getting type-safe results, we're also getting pagination information. Now, the other thing that is possible is to use the REST API. So how can I quickly show an example of that? Well, we could just go over here and inside of, let's leave this query here, but then let's also do it with a REST API. And so how am I going to do this? We're going to say, so this will say this is to-do REST. And so you can see it's using the default URL /API/to-dos, and you just specify the ID to-do you want, and then you get the results. So let's get this updated. I saved it. All right, let's go to the car wash. Parse URL, undefined. Oh, it looks like I didn't set my environment variables, so let's go into my environment variables. And I did not set my database URL, so let me set that appropriately. So what is it? It is, where am I? Next public payload URL. So let's copy that. And let's try this again. Looks like it's rebuilding everything. Okay, so we're back in the app. So what we want to do now is we want to see if we got something back from REST API. So let's just console log this. And you could see we got our user object back. And just to be certain, what we'll do here is we will just, let's change this. And here we will use this to do and update our page. It's rebuilding and it works. So as you can see, I could either use the Payload API, which I wouldn't recommend using because it's a lot easier, or you can use the REST API that's provided to you from Payload. And the video is getting a little bit long, but I want to try and demonstrate one more thing. And we want to show how to create a to-do and how to upload the image that's associated with the to-do. Okay, let's create a page now to create a to-do. So let's go to my front end. Let's do this. And let's hope that we can get a lot of help here from cursor to kind of get some of this code for me, since I want to focus more on kind of the action than the style and everything. All right, we got to clean up this form a little bit. Okay, so we have a little bit of style here. So we can capture our input fields, our title, description, whether or not it's completed, and associate a media file with it. All right, so now we have our fields. We need to capture all of our fields. We're going to create a server action that will handle all of this input and then make the upload. But first we need to get all of the information from the form. It's going to, I think that things just get a little crazy. I know that Cursor wants to try to do it this way. I think that things just get a little crazy when you start to throw too much code in here. So I'm going to just remove this code and we'll just create an upload action. So we'll just say create to do. And what we'll do is we'll create an action up top here. Okay, what is this doing down here? So looks like we tried to add some code here. Let's see what we got. So these guys need to all be strings, and so that's what it's complaining about. We are not going to put the media in yet. So let's see what is completed as Boolean. Format should be null to type in may not be. Well, let's do this. So if we have a value, then true, otherwise false. Let's just do it like that. That's just cleaner. So what we're going to do here is this, we will get all the data, and this should create a new to-do for us. We're not going to deal with the media quite yet because there's a different approach that you need for the media. So let's just test to see if we are able to successfully upload a new to-do. All right, so let's just use some junk data, Aaron Saunders. We'll just check the completed to see if that works. We won't select any media, and let's select create. And I got my post 200 on the bottom here, so it looks like it worked, but let's open up my to-dos and payload, and my new to-do was added. Let's open that up. And here's my new to-do. But what we want to do now is we want to associate the media object with the to-do. And so the approach that I'm going to take is we're going to have a two-step process. It is my belief that to try to upload media with the payload local API is just a little extra. So what I do is I just use the REST API to upload the media. I just think it's a lot easier. And so that's the example that I'm going to show here. Use REST and pass to the payload create to do. That's basically what we want to do. So this is getting kind of close with what it's trying to do, but we want to remember we need to do a post and we need to get the media object. We have the document working by itself, but what we needed was this media ID. So the way we handle that is we take the media object that got passed to us as a file, and then we create a new form. We're going to call this media form data. We append the file to it, and then payload has this kind of weird underscored thing that you need to do with payload because we need to pass the alt information to it also. So that's what we're trying to pass up here. So we just take the title that got passed into us, we put alt in the front of it, and we pass that in as a string. Now remember we're using the REST API for the upload here. So you could see we're taking our URL that we set in our environment file. We're using /API media. We're doing a post, and then we're going to pass the media form data. The documentation says that we should not set any headers, so we're not going to set any headers. And we're just going to take this form object that has the file and the alt information associated to it. We're going to upload it. Then we're going to take the response that we get back from it. We should get passed back a document that looks like this. We're going to pluck the the ID off of it. So that's what we're doing here is we're checking to see if we got a document. If not, we're going to throw an error. We're going to take the doc ID and we're going to pass the doc ID in to our to-do to create the relationship so that this image or this media object is now associated with the to-do. So let's go back to our application. We need to add a link to create a new one. So let's go to where's our home page. And we'll just, like I said, we're not really caught on style here, so we'll just add a link to create to-dos. We can put a little bit of padding around here because that does look, well, what's this going to do? It's going to make it look really crazy. And that's not too bad. And let's just put some padding. So now let's go to our create to-do, new to-do with image, and let's hope this works. And then we're going to choose a file, open, and then let's create my to-do. We can look, if we notice down here, we saw our media post with our 200s, that was good, and the create to-do happened with a 200. Need to add a kind of go back on complete, but let's see. So let's just go back ourselves, and here's our new to-do with image, and here's the image that we uploaded with it. Error here. Let's see if I can get this resolved. We'll just pass the form data in like that, and let's see if that solves our error. All right, looks like we have no, well, let me save it. I probably want this to, I want it to revalidate. Actually, I believe I want it to revalidate and redirect. So let's accept that revalidate. And if I'm successful, it will revalidate the home path, which will force it to reload itself. So I'll get my new data and then I'll redirect to it. So all my errors are gone. Let's try this one more time. I'll just use that. Open, create. So we created it, revalidated, and my one more time is here at the top. I go to it and my image is here. So I'm going to wrap there. I'll post the source code. I just wanted to quickly show how you can get Payload CMS to kind of do some pretty awesome things for you with very little code, and really just open your mind to things that you can do beyond just building a website and beyond just treating this as a headless CMS because of all the power that's built into it. Please leave a comment. Let me know what your thoughts are. I will talk to you later. Bye.